Well, the federal budget has been tabled. There's been plenty of opposition party reacts, and now the focus turns to whether it would be supported by the NDP. For a closer look at that, we're joined live by federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. Mr. Singh, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us. You've made it very clear you're not pleased with this budget. I know your party's been mulling it over. Are you going to vote for this budget? Will you support it?
Well, it's not a decision we're making yet. I've raised some concerns. I do have to acknowledge, though, we were able to fight for some important things that are in this budget that would have not happened but for the fact we forced the Liberals. So the school lunch program, giving kids a meal in school, making sure people have free birth control, free diabetes medication and devices. That was us. We forced that. And bringing in free protection for renters, making sure renters are protected. So lots of folks that are worried about being evicted or rent evicted, we're protecting them with a fund. That was because of us. The Conservatives want to cut all of that. They want to take all that away. But we are concerned about a couple of things, and we want to hear from the Prime Minister before we make our decision. Concerned about the $200 a month disability benefit. That amount is far too low. We're also concerned about 5,000 public sector workers being cut. We're also concerned about Indigenous communities not getting enough support for infrastructure and housing. So there's concerns. I want to hear what the Prime Minister's plan is to address those concerns.
So you have concerns, but you voting against this budget, Mr. Singh, would trigger an election. And that's not something the NDP would want right now, given that the polls are not on your side. So do you really mean it when you say you're considering voting against Justin Trudeau's budget?
Well, we want to make sure I hear from the Prime Minister. I've got some serious concerns, and folks have raised those concerns with me. So I want to raise those concerns directly with the Prime Minister, and then we'll reflect on that. But I do want to acknowledge that we know how important this vote is. It's a very big deal. We also know that there's a lot of big things that we fought for, that Conservatives want to cut and gut, and they want to take away from people. And we know people need some relief, and we have fought to bring in that relief for people. So we're weighing all these things very carefully. And I think it's understandable that the budget just came out yesterday. We're going to look it over and make sure it hits the things that we need to see in there, that it is true to the spirit of what we fought and forced the government to do. We want to make sure that we're looking at this very carefully before we make that decision.
I want to talk to you about the GTA perspective. Food prices, as you know, are way up. Gas prices up. House prices out of this world. What would you do differently to tackle the pain that so many families here at home are feeling?
I really appreciate the question, and actually one of the biggest failures of this budget, we have identified very clearly, whether it's high price of groceries, high price or record high across the world for the price that we pay for a cell phone and internet fees. Like you mentioned, the high cost of housing. All of these things, the culprit or the cause is corporate greed. Corporate greed in grocery stores making record profits while we can't afford our groceries. Corporate greed in the big telcos, the Rogers, TELUS, and Bell, that own really the only options for most people when it comes to cell phone and internet fees. So we have identified that as a problem. And that is the pain that people are feeling right now. Neither the Conservatives or the Liberals seem to have the courage to go after this real concern, this real problem that will really cut to the heart of why people are struggling. Corporate greed. Economists agree that is driving up the cost of living. We have to tackle it with better protection for consumers by putting in an excess profit tax like other European countries have done. There's a lot that we can do to take on corporate greed. The Liberals have clearly missed that.
Mr. Singh, there's been some confusion about your position on carbon pricing. The Prime Minister says he doesn't understand. Clear this up for us. Yes or no? Do you support a carbon levy paid for by consumers?
We have not changed our position on the price on pollution. We believe in it. We support it. But we are concerned about the unfairness of the Liberal government's approach. And their approach is not just based on one piece. It's an entire approach. And one of those concerns we've raised, and I raised in a speech recently, was that they give billions of dollars in subsidies, so public money, that goes to highly profitable oil and gas companies. Some have put that number as high as $18 billion, according to a report recently. While everyday folks, regular consumers, working class Canadians, are told there's not enough money for you to have help to buy a heat pump or to make changes to your home to reduce your emissions and reduce your costs. That's unfair. And that's what I raised, and I continue to raise, that the Liberals are not approaching this really serious problem in a way that's fair to working class people when they give billions of dollars of subsidies to and don't give supports for working class people.
So I hear you that you support a price on pollution, but is that a yes or a no to supporting a carbon levy paid for by consumers?
Right, we haven't changed our position. We believe very strongly in that price on pollution. We believe we've got to fight the climate crisis. The Conservatives don't believe that. They believe that big polluters can just dump and pollute the environment, pollute the air. We think that's a completely wrong approach. But what I'm trying to isolate is our concern with the liberal approach is this unfair approach when it comes to working people. And I very much have isolated that to one example right now, which is the big oil and gas subsidies that are billions of dollars, but no help for Canadians who say, well, what if I want to buy a heat pump? What if I want to retrofit my home? There's no help for that. That's what I've raised as a concern. And I think that is a fair concern that Canadians are raising with me.
Okay, leader of the federal NDP, Jagmeet Singh, we appreciate your time. Thank you for this.